In an era where economic power shifts faster than TikTok trends, imagine an island nation, seemingly insignificant, that once amassed so much wealth it basically held the global economy hostage. Imagine a tiny island, barely a speck on the map, that didn't conquer with armies, but with pure, unimaginable wealth. How did a small landmass achieve such unprecedented global financial power, shaking the foundations of empires and reshaping the world's economy? Prepare to be astonished by a true story of audacious ambition and incredible fortune that redefined what an island could be. They say no empire lasts forever. But what if one did and no one noticed? What if the greatest empire the world has ever known didn't conquer with guns or ships, but with balance sheets, interest rates, and quiet signatures on contracts most people never read? An empire with no flag, no borders, and yet, it owns almost everything you see. This is the story of the island that bought the world. A tiny patch of land that learned to turn paper into power, and power into ownership. Because sometimes the strongest empire is the one that hides inside your bank account. The myth of size. How can an island rule the world? At first glance it makes no sense. How can something so small, surrounded by water, with limited land and almost no natural resources, come to control the fates of nations thousands of times its size? The answer lies in something invisible: trust. Long before missiles or microchips, empires were built on belief. Belief that your money was worth something, that your debt could be repaid, that your promise meant power. And no one understood that better than a string of small islands. From the misty harbors of London, to the neon lights of Tokyo, to the steel towers of Singapore and Manhattan. But this story begins with one island in particular: Britain, the island that wrote the rules of global finance. Origins: the birth of the financial empire. Britain was never meant to rule the world. It was cold, damp, and perpetually broke. But in 1694, a small group of merchants gathered in a dimly lit room and made a proposal that would change history. They offered to lend money to the king. Not gold but credit. In return they demanded something radical: the right to create money backed by that debt. That institution became the Bank of England, and the world's first true central bank was born. From that moment, Britain discovered something extraordinary. You didn't need to conquer land to gain power. You just needed to control the system everyone used to measure it. The alchemy of debt. Debt became the new weapon of empire. When Britain needed ships, it borrowed. When it needed colonies, it borrowed. When it needed wars, it borrowed again. But here's the trick. It borrowed in its own currency, the pound. So as long as the world trusted the pound, Britain could print wealth out of thin air and make the rest of the world pay for it. From India to Africa, from the Caribbean to the Pacific, British ships arrived not just with soldiers but with contracts. Loans for railways, loans for mines, loans for governments who didn't understand that the fine print was another kind of chain. Empires of muscle fade. Empires of money last centuries. The rise of paper power. By the 19th century, the pound was the world's reserve currency. London wasn't just a city, it was the world's bank. Every trade, every debt, every insurance policy flowed through its financial veins. The sun never set on the British Empire, because even when its colonies slept, their money worked through London. But the island grew arrogant. It believed it could never fall. And in that belief lay the seed of its downfall. The fall, when the island cracked. 2 world wars changed everything. Britain's debts exploded. Its colonies began to rebel. And across the Atlantic, another island, or at least a metaphorical one, was rising: Manhattan. The United States emerged from World War II rich, powerful, and armed with a new kind of currency. One that the entire world was forced to trust: the US dollar. In 1944, in a small town called Bretton Woods, world leaders met to design the new financial order. And just like that, the pound was dethroned. The dollar became king. But the playbook, the art of controlling the world through money, that remained very much alive. The second island, Japan, buys the world. After World War II, Japan was a shattered nation. Its cities burned, its economy destroyed, and its people humiliated. Yet within a generation, it became the second most powerful economy on Earth. by mastering the new form of financial empire, industrial credit. While the West obsessed over consumption, Japan built an economy on production, discipline, and long-term lending. Its government worked hand in hand with banks and corporations, funneling money into industries that would conquer the world: cars, electronics, steel. By the 1980s, Japan wasn't just exporting goods. It was exporting money. Japanese banks were lending across Asia, buying U.S. Treasury bonds, and even snapping up American landmarks, from Columbia Pictures to Rockefeller Center. Headlines screamed, "Japan buys the world." But just like Britain, Japan made the same mistake. It believed its rise was eternal. The bubble, when wealth becomes a mirage. By 1989, the Tokyo Stock Exchange was worth more than the combined markets of the US, UK, and Germany. Land prices went insane. The Imperial Palace grounds were said to be worth more than the entire state of California. Banks loaned money backed by nothing but inflated paper dreams. And when the bubble popped, it didn't just hurt investors, it froze Japan's economy for decades. They called it the lost decade. But it lasted much longer than that. The island that bought the world discovered what happens when the world stops believing in your illusion of wealth. The third island, the digital empire. While Japan was licking its wounds, another island was quietly rising: Singapore. With no oil, no farmland, and no minerals, it built its empire through one thing: trust in the system. Singapore became the offshore hub for Asia. A safe, efficient, corruption-free node in the global financial network. And across the oceans, another island emerged: Manhattan, not geographically isolated but financially fortified. The era of physical empires was over. Now came the age of digital empires. Offshore accounts, derivatives, and invisible capital flows. Money no longer needed to exist in one place. It moved at the speed of light, and yet almost all of it still passed through islands. From the Cayman Islands to Jersey, Singapore, Hong Kong, and Manhattan. Tiny dots on the map held trillions in assets. The hidden backbone of global capitalism. And once again, a few small islands had learned how to own the world. The breaking point: the world becomes the island. In 2008, the illusion cracked again. Banks too big to fail collapsed under the weight of their own inventions. Governments printed trillions to save them. And just like in 1694, debt became the solution to debt. But here's the terrifying twist. This time there was no island left to blame. The whole world had become the island. Every nation borrowed. Every central bank printed. Every government promised growth it couldn't deliver. The game Britain started and Japan refined had gone global. And there was no exit. The new empire, the island with no name. Today the island is no longer a place. It's a network. A web of algorithms, offshore funds, and private equity empires. It's Apple's cash reserves hidden in tax havens. It's hedge funds controlling food prices. It's debt markets deciding who lives comfortably and who goes hungry. And while we talk about nations and borders, the real rulers of the world operate in the shadows. Behind screens, in server rooms, on private jets landing on literal and digital islands. Money has finally conquered geography. The empire is complete. The modern parallels: history repeats in disguise. Every financial empire follows the same pattern. 1. Trust is built. A currency or system becomes the foundation of global trade. 2. Credit expands. Everyone borrows because the system seems safe. 3. Wealth inflates. Paper gains look like real prosperity. 4. Faith breaks. One shock: a war, a crash, a pandemic, and the illusion vanishes. 5. The system resets. Old debts are destroyed, new empires rise. In 1900, that system was centered in London. In 1980, in Tokyo. In 2025, it's New York, Washington, and a growing network of offshore digital nodes. But cracks are appearing again. Record global debt, vanishing trust, inflation that won't die, and a currency system stretched to its limits. And somewhere in the shadows, a new island is already preparing to rise. The hidden pattern: when wealth turns to power and power turns to control. Every empire in history has promised freedom. And everyone in time used its power to control. The British Empire used debt to rule colonies. Japan used cheap loans to dominate trade. Today's digital empires use data, the new currency of control. If you know what people buy, think, or fear, you don't need to conquer them. They'll willingly obey. The same logic that built global finance now fuels social algorithms, digital currencies, and AI-driven economies. Money was just the beginning. Now, trust itself is being privatized. The return of the island, modern examples. Look around. London, still the world's biggest offshore financial hub. Singapore, now manages more wealth than Switzerland. Dubai, a rising node in the new global network. And tiny Caribbean islands hold $11 trillion in hidden wealth. More than the GDP of every country in Africa combined. The empire of islands never died. It just went underground. And when nations need loans, they go back, quietly, to the islands that bought the world. The coming reset. Every financial empire believes it's immortal, until trust evaporates. When the next crisis comes, whether triggered by war, AI disruption, or a debt implosion, the same question will decide who rules the next century. Who controls the trust? Will it be a nation? A corporation? Or something entirely new? A digital island without borders or accountability? History suggests that the next empire won't have a king or parliament. It'll have servers, algorithms, and terms of service you didn't read. 3 takeaways. What the island teaches us. 1. Power doesn't disappear, it migrates. When empires fall, their money doesn't vanish. It moves, from kings to bankers, from banks to algorithms. Follow the flow of capital and you'll find the real rulers. 2. Every system is built on trust. Once people stop believing in the paper, whether it's the pound, the yen, or the dollar, the system collapses overnight. Faith, not gold, is the foundation of every empire. 3. The next island is already rising. It might be a nation like China, a company like BlackRock, or a digital currency you haven't heard of yet. But make no mistake, the game continues. Empires used to fight for land. Now they fight for influence. And the battlefield isn't a trench or a colony. It's your wallet, your data, and your attention. We live inside the empire now. The question isn't whether the island bought the world. It's whether we've already sold it. You found this story unsettling? Good. Because the only thing stronger than money is awareness. Share this video. Subscribe for more untold histories. And remember, every empire begins with a story people believe. And sometimes, the most dangerous story of all is the one that still feels true. You found this story unsettling? Good. Because the only thing stronger than money is awareness. Share this video. Subscribe for more untold histories. And remember, every empire begins with a story people believe. And sometimes, the most dangerous story of all is the one that still feels true.